We're back here on Business Portal. This is your host, Toti Casino, and our guest for this episode, which is on the topic of constitutional reform, is the founder of Get Real Philippines and Correct Movement, none other than Orion Perez Dumdum. So, Orion, we were talking about what happened in India. They nationalized the industries, and you were saying that the Hindu growth rate wasn't so spectacular. So how did they go to some kind of reform?
They did.
All right.
What basically happened was in 1991, then Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, who actually took over from Rajiv Gandhi, who was killed. You know,
Yes.
there was this explosion, and it killed him.
Okay.
When that happened, Narasimha Rao realized when he looked at the budget, the financial situation in India, the fiscal situation in India, he saw how bad things were. He saw that they were actually at the verge of a major financial collapse, they were on the verge of bankruptcy, basically. And he was getting calls from the IMF and the World Bank saying that, look, we're not going to be able to lend you any more money unless you get your act together.
Okay.
And so he decided, well, there was really nothing else they could do. He basically got, today he's already the Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh, to be the Finance Minister of India. And both of them actually decided, let's study what the other large country in the world is doing.
Okay.
And that other large country in the world is China.
Okay.
So when these two Indian leaders, together with their entourage, went over to China, they actually witnessed a major difference. They saw how nice the airports there were compared to what they had. They saw how nice the roads were compared to what they had, and they started asking all these questions of the leaders. What are you doing right, and how do you get to pay for all this?
Okay.
And the leaders in China basically said, well, what we did was we allowed foreign companies to come in and create jobs for our people, and that's why we're able to pay for all this, because the taxes.
This was during the time of Deng Xiaoping.
Yes, this was this was after
Mao Zedong.
Yes.
So when he opened the doors, he brought in foreign investments. So he had two systems, the capitalism and communism.
Yes, what happened really was the communist system by Mao, the Maoist system, which the CPP, NPA, NDF are fighting for, was repudiated by Deng Xiaoping.
By Deng Xiaoping?
Yeah.
Right.
Deng Xiaoping.
Deng Xiaoping.
Yeah, Deng Xiaoping. He basically revolutionized the thought process in China, because before it was all communism. Everyone's equal.
Yeah.
To each according to ability, to each according to need, from each according to ability. But he changed all that. He said, 致富光荣, which means to be rich is glorious. So he basically started introducing the concept of prosperity, working for your own prosperity, rather than this whole equality concept.
But that was something that the Mao Zedong was trying to suppress.
He was trying to suppress that.
Suppress, because there was the wealth was only concentrated to the few.
Exactly, but that's the problem also, because Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward was a major disaster. So millions of Chinese died because of the flawed communist policies.
What did they die of? Hunger?
They died of hunger. There was a famine, basically.
Okay.
He had a lot of these misguided economic policies, and because people were being paid not based on the output that they did, no one was really motivated to grow crops,
all right.
raise poultry or whatever.
Okay.
So people didn't raise.
What made Deng Xiaoping decide to open up?
Well, after Mao Zedong died
in the 70s.
In the 70s, he was the one who took over, and when he took over, he realized that all the things that many of the things that Mao did were wrong. And he says, what do I need to do to fix it? So he did all these state visits. He visited other countries. He went over to Singapore and Malaysia, and he saw how they had actually progressed compared to them. Especially Singapore. Singapore was one of the main countries that he saw, which really, really got so much better than they were before. And when he spoke with Lee Kuan Yew, he found out that Lee Kuan Yew's strategy was to invite foreign investors, allow 100% ownership.
Okay.
and use that as a means to create jobs.
So is China now allowing 100% ownership?
Yes, they allow that. They allow 100% ownership. They started off right after the visit. I would think it must have been 1977 or 1978.
Okay.
And it was, I think, in 1979 when 78 or 79, something like that, where Deng Xiaoping decided that he wanted to learn how they were doing it in Singapore. So we set up Shenzhen.
What is
Shenzhen, Shenzhen,
Yeah.
which is right next to Hong Kong.
Okay. That's the nearest province, right?
Yes. What he did was he started up this small pilot project of allowing foreign companies, mostly from Hong Kong, many of these Hong Kong textile, whatever, to come, please set up your shops here. We're cheaper. Instead of Hong Kong, you guys are so crowded, it's so expensive. Why don't you come here across the border where probably you're just going to spend 1/10 of what you're paying
this
for
was before
labor.
the 1997 turnover.
That was long before that. That was in 1978 or 79.
Ah, all right.
So that was the start of Shenzhen.
Okay.
And it was like a special economic zone. It was like, essentially what happened in China was they had this, they had barbed wire fences where the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, set up this whole perimeter here in Shenzhen. It used to be a small, sleepy village.
Okay.
But they created this area, and they started building roads, and they used that as the infrastructure that would bring in all these factories to set up shop. And when they did, people went over there, and it became a showcase of 致富光荣, of what is called to become rich is glorious. Shenzhen is one of the richest cities in China today.
Right.
And it became the model for all the rest of the coastal cities in China
And then
to
the rest
develop.
followed, like Guangzhou.
Yeah, Guangzhou and Shanghai.
Shanghai has been
Beijing.
Shanghai has been the financial district center even before.
Yes, that's right. It was before.
the
Of
fall.
course, it lost it when the communists took over.
Right.
Many of the Shanghainese families actually emigrated. They went abroad. Many of them went to Shanghai. Oh, I'm sorry. Many of them went to Hong Kong.
In Singapore,
In Singapore or wherever else. The
yeah.
U.S. So there was this massive brain drain. But later on, Deng Xiaoping actually decided, hey, let's invite all these people back in. Later on, to set up companies.
So seeing the miracle that happened in China, India did the same.
India did the same. So they started this regimen of changing their rules. Lucky for India, it was not in the constitution. So the constitution of India does not say we are going to restrict, 60-40 or 100% has to be owned by Indians. They didn't put that there in their constitution. Instead they even said their trade must be free. That's in their constitution. But in any case, they reversed whatever old legislation that existed that restricted foreign investors from coming in, as well as other restrictions that prevented the expansion in size of local companies. You see, the thing about India before was they believed a bit in this whole Gandhian minimalist ethos. And when I say Gandhian minimalist, we know that Mahatma Gandhi was himself somebody who advocated, cottage industries, village level subsistence and all that. It was homespun clothing, no to mass-produced items and things like that. It was all about small-scale businesses and all that. So that kind of became the paradigm in India. That's why they started saying, they said before, no large companies. If you want to become a large company, you're going to have to set up a new company.
Okay. Now let's move in forward to the concept of the Constitution. We've done already much on the economy. Let's talk about modern Constitution. You're saying that the Indian Constitution is silent.
You're silent about it.
Restrictions. So your movement is saying you're not encouraging 100%. All you're just saying is take out that restriction and just be silent about it. And if need be, proceed with legislation. So what other reforms does your group looking forward to? I mean, the type of government are we looking into?
Yeah, well, okay, so the first one is economic liberalization. The second one is for an evolutionary transformation to region-based decentralization.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So many people would sometimes call it federalism.
All right.
Okay, I would call it first an evolved transition to region-based decentralization.
So not quick.
Not quick, not instantaneous, not
Okay.
big bang. So it has to be one which is evolving, because we're coming from a centralized unitary
But we
system.
had decentralized under the local government code.
But they're not based on regions. So
Okay.
they don't have the same type of economies of scale that larger regions would have.
When you say regions, you're talking about the 17 regions of the country.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And what kind of form of government are we looking into this type of regions? Federalism is what you're saying.
Yeah, federalism is
How
one of
is-
the different forms. There's unitary, and then there's federal. So there's basically a continuum. In between, you have these intermediate forms. So you have quasi-federalism, and then you have semi-federalism. It depends, really.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's about the taxation. How much taxes go to the national government first before being remitted back,
Okay.
or do they actually use most of their money and then just remit a small percentage to the national government?
Yeah, right.
So little things like that. You adjust that in between. That's how far in between
Just
you
like
can
what's
see it.
happening in Lanao. You've got Lanao
Yes.
Lake that's feeding up water through that Cristina Falls,
Mm-hmm.
and it generates so much power all over the islands of Mindanao. But in terms of return, in developing the two provinces that has that boundary of Lanao Lake, they do not benefit from.
That's quite unfortunate. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very unfortunate.
right.
So I mean, it would be nice if what
So
you
something
have.
that would be what do you say, equal in terms of distribution.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so and this federalism is it federalism? Is that the right term that you're going to use for this?
Some people call it evolving federalism.
Okay.
I call it evolving region-based decentralization. Only because I don't want people to say that it's necessarily federalism. Federalism is what we aim for, but right after we change the constitution, it doesn't necessarily mean we're automatically
Okay.
federalist.
Sometimes when you hear changing the constitution, we're talking about from a bicameral to unicameral. What is the stance?
Well, our stance
Okay,
is,
good. Yeah.
personally, I have nothing against bicameral per se.
Okay.
However, I think that a bicameral legislature should reflect constituencies.
Okay.
So that means we have constituencies for the districts in the lower house.
Yeah, right.
If you have an upper house, you should also have constituencies.
Ah.
Currently, the upper house, the Senate, does not have constituencies. So I'm saying, if you're not going to have any constituencies for the upper house, don't have an upper house.
I see. Let's talk more about the division of this and the form of government that you live. We have to pause for a break. You're tuning in here on the Business Portal. This is your host, Toti Casino, with our guest is Orion Perez Dumdum, and our topic for this episode is constitutional reform. Do stay tuned for the concluding segment of this portion.